The 2024 presidential election is already shaping up to be contentious. A major controversy is felon voting rights. Former President Trump targeted Minnesota Governor Tim Walz over this issue. Walz advocates for restoring voting rights to felons who have completed their sentences. Trump used this to attack Walz and energize his base. Despite his own felony conviction, Trump criticized Walz as soft on crime. Critics noted the irony of Trump, a convicted felon, attacking Walz. This highlights the complex nature of felon voting rights in the U.S. The United States does not have a uniform system when it comes to felon voting rights. Instead, each state has its own laws determining whether and when convicted felons can regain their right to vote. This patchwork of laws creates a confusing and often unfair system where the right to vote can depend on one's state of residence. Some states, like Maine and Vermont, have relatively lenient laws that allow felons to vote even while incarcerated. Other states, like Minnesota and New York, restore voting rights upon completion of a prison sentence. However, many states, particularly in the South, have stricter laws that can permanently disenfranchise individuals with felony convictions. This variation in state laws reflects differing views on the nature of voting rights and the purpose of criminal punishment. Some believe that voting is a fundamental right that should not be taken away, even as a consequence of a crime. Others argue that voting is a privilege that can be revoked as part of a just punishment for criminal behavior. Minnesota stands out as a state with relatively progressive laws on felon voting rights. Under Minnesota law, individuals convicted of felonies automatically regain their right to vote upon completion of their sentence, including any period of parole or probation. This means that once a person has served their time and re-entered society, they are welcomed back as full citizens with all of their rights restored. Proponents of Minnesota's approach argue that it promotes rehabilitation and reintegration for former offenders. By restoring voting rights, the state sends a message that these individuals are still valued members of society and have a voice in the political process. This can encourage civic engagement and reduce recidivism rates. Governor Walz's support for these policies reflects a broader movement across the country to reform the criminal justice system and promote second chances for those who have made mistakes. This movement is gaining momentum as more people recognize the need for a more humane and effective approach to criminal justice. Section 4, Florida, the Shadow of Disenfranchisement. Florida has harsh laws on felon voting rights. Individuals convicted of felonies lose their right to vote indefinitely. The process for restoring voting rights is complex and arbitrary. This system disenfranchises many, especially minorities. Critics say these laws stem from Jim Crow-era policies. Florida's role in the 2000 election highlights the impact of these laws. Section 5. The Political Battlefield, How Voting Rights Shape Elections. The debate over felon voting rights is not just an abstract legal argument, it has real-world consequences for American democracy. The right to vote is the cornerstone of any democratic society, and restricting that right, even for those who have broken the law, has profound implications. In many elections, the outcome can be decided by a relatively small number of votes. This is especially true in swing states where the electorate is closely divided. In these cases, the votes of felons, who are often concentrated in urban areas, could make a significant difference. This is why the issue of felon voting rights has become so politically charged. Political parties and candidates recognize the potential impact of these laws on election outcomes, and they often take positions that align with their electoral interests. This can lead to a situation where the right to vote becomes a political football, subject to manipulation and partisan maneuvering. Section 6. A Question of Justice, the Future of Felon Voting Rights. The debate over felon voting rights is ultimately a question of justice and fairness. It forces us to grapple with fundamental questions about the nature of citizenship, the purpose of punishment, and the meaning of redemption. There are strong arguments to be made on both sides of this issue, and it is a debate that is likely to continue for many years to come. As the United States continues to grapple with issues of mass incarceration, racial disparities in the criminal justice system, and the legacy of voter suppression, the question of felon voting rights will remain front and center. The choices we make on this issue will have a profound impact on the lives of millions of Americans and on the health of our democracy as a whole. It is a debate that deserves our careful consideration and thoughtful deliberation.